following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. Mets in the Zone. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The two Mets mavens are here, and Robert Cole and Marty Rose. How you guys doing? Start with you, Robert.
Doing good, Ralph. Doing good.
Good. Marty, everything all right?
Yeah, very good. Excellent.
Both families are fine with you guys, right?
Oh, yeah. We had the little granddaughter's birthday was last Thursday. So
did you get enough cake? That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah.
I know. I saw the picture. She had a gigantic, beautiful cake.
Yep, custom made.
Custom made. And let's see. This has been, before we get to the Mets, we have to acknowledge that one of the greatest individual basketball players died today, Elgin Baylor. When we were kids, we were all three of us pretty much the same age. It was, if you had an all-star team, you'd say Pettit and Baylor up front, Wilt or Russell as the center, depending on what you wanted. If you wanted to win, you'd get Russell. And Oscar and Jerry West in the backcourt. It was that definitive that those guys were the cream of the crop in the NBA. And when we talk about the NBA, it was a much different, much more talented players physically, today's game, but much rougher game, much better fundamental game, and only 8 teams. And for a while, there were 10 players on each team. That's 80 players in the United States of America. I mean, and to be that great that you're among the top 5 or 6, and certainly among the top 1 or 2 at his position, he was unbelievable. Very sad to me. He was 86. Tally always is a realist. Well, he lived a long life, and this, that, and the other thing. But you die. It's never enough time, no matter how long you live. And so why don't I start with you, Marty, because we sat in Madison Square Garden many a times. We saw all the greats.
Yeah.
What was your... tell me about Elgin from your standpoint.
Yeah, well, we used to see double headers, Ralph. Do you remember that?
Half
NBA games, 2 games.
Half the NBA was playing that day. 4 teams, double header,
right.
And I can't. Those memories are so ingrained in my head.
Yep.
And the only thing I remember about Elgin physically was he had this way of hanging in the air, not just on his jump shot, but he could go up and switch hands, hang long enough to be able to switch hands to dunk effectively, depending on what the defense was.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I remember about him too. I mean, just how can you do that? It's like defying gravity. Nobody else was doing that back then. He was the first.
He was Dr. J before Dr. J.
Exactly. Pretty much so. You're right.
I don't think he had the dunks, but he had the moves under the basket that were incredible. And I just want to say that Baylor was hurt the year that Wilt came from, I guess it was from San Francisco at that time. And Baylor and West came very close to winning the championship. And if Baylor, or Wilt and West, and if Baylor were healthy, I doubt very seriously if they could have avoided winning. And the happy or sad part of that was the New York Knicks. I think they would have handedly beaten the Knicks were Baylor healthy, and he wasn't. So I guess our overall memories were enhanced by his being hurt. But for the quality of the game, you know, I've always hated injuries. Mantle is a good example. I've been listening to a lot of Mel Allen, Red Barber, and Phil Rizzuto doing Yankee games in the 50s, in the late 50s. And God, Mantle was great. I mean, and Bobby Richardson was very underrated. I'm just saying, from their descriptions of plays being made, he went back on the ball better than any second baseman around. I guess Mazeroski was quicker with the double play, but not by much. Richardson was terrific.
Yeah.
Just some ramblings from me. How about you, Robert? A little ramblings of early NBA, of Elgin, anything that comes to mind? Because this is basically three guys kibitzing. That's been our show.
The funny thing is, you know, they showed a couple of pictures today, you know, along with the story of his passing. And, of course, the first thing that jumps out are the shorts that they used to wear back in those days.
Well, I will go into that another day, Robert. But Robert, I'm non-judgmental. God bless you for noticing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ralph. But
no, thank you. I'm nothing but what I am. And you could put the emphasis on nothing very easily. Yes, that, and I just, you know, he's 10 years older than, 10, 11, 12 years older than us. So imagine when we were 12, how, and this new show I'm doing, getting people's reaction to following baseball when they were 12. I mean, it comes up, the hero worship. Marty and I would go and sit 3-4 rows back sometimes on half court. These great seats provided by your uncle, and who was a terrific sports writer. I mean, he fueled our flames of passion. I don't think it would have been, if we didn't have access to each other and his tickets and these games, I don't think it would have been the same for us. We would have had to develop an interest in something that was useful, for instance. Imagine doing that, and what a stretch it would have been for me. What else do you remember, Robert, about Elgin and those NBA years?
Well, you know, you mentioned that there were only 8 teams, and you have to remember where those teams were. Elgin started in Minneapolis with the Minneapolis Lakers. Okay, there were teams in Minneapolis and Fort Wayne and Rochester and Syracuse. You know, those were the cities where the NBA started. And then, you know, you're talking about the double headers, okay, at Madison Square Garden, and fans would go for the first game because it was usually between the Hawks and the Celtics, or the Celtics and the Warriors. And the Knicks would play in the second game, and half the crowd would leave after the Celtics-Hawks game, you know,
right,
instead of staying to watch, you know, the Syracuse Nationals play the Knicks. You know, I mean, it was a totally different, you know, young people today have no idea, you know, watching the NBA today and what the NBA was, you know, back in the 50s when we were growing up. And back in the 50s, the NBA really was a new league. You know, I mean, it really only started after, you know, World War II. And you mentioned how rough the league was. Well, a lot of those guys that were playing, okay, were old Marines and old soldiers, and you know, all they knew was rough. You know, guys like Jim Luskatov and Clyde Lovellette, guys like that. I mean, you know, there was no smoothness. There was a lot of pushing and shoving and fighting. You know, it was a totally different game.
Yep.
And there were guys too that made a difference racially. Greer, those guys, Sam Jones, the way the Celtics were constructed. It used to be in the real early days, 2 blacks on a team was basically the maximum. And when Arnold Red Auerbach came along, he started drafting guys based on, of all things, talent rather than color of their skin. So
yeah.
You got the Jones boys, you got Russell, you got guys playing together that were replacing the Cousy and right, exactly,
yeah.
from NYU. From NYU, and it was just a different world. But one of the first open court players who would slash and use his amazing talents, he wasn't that tall, Elgin.
I think he was 6'5" or 6'6" tops.
Right. Right, and amazing that Oscar would play basically up front a lot, and they would go up against each other defensively, because those were the teams that I remember. Cincinnati coming in to the Garden to play the Lakers in that first game.
Wow.
So. Yeah, sad losing an icon. And the older we get, the more. Last year was abominable. How many Hall of Famers were lost. And I don't know what killed. I never saw a cause of death. If it was COVID or not.
No, just normal. Just, you know, the age. He wasn't sick or anything. Natural causes was what they said.
Okay, that's good, I guess. All right, let's segue into doing a little Met talk. We're getting close to opening day. Had a few injuries in the pitching staff in the last few days, Carrasco and what have you. Marty, start with you.
Yeah, well, I think that what we spoke about earlier about the depth that they have in the rotation, or the possible rotation, is good. It's still good, even with the guys that are out. I mean, okay, Syndergaard may be back in June, Carrasco may be back, sometime in May. But outside of that, you've got, besides Jake, you've got Stroman, Peterson, Walker, and Yamamoto. So even if you take Lucchesi out of the rotation, you still got those five guys. I don't know if Robert said, somebody said that another lefty in the bullpen would be good. So, if they put Lucchesi out in the bullpen with Loop, you got two lefties out there. And I still think that the rotation is strong even with the injuries.
Okay. Robert.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Lucchesi has pitched out of the bullpen before. Now, he came to the Mets wanting to be a starter. I can understand that. But, he'll add depth. He'll be the second lefty out of the bullpen. And, like Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez were saying the other day, you need at least two lefties because you don't always use the guy late in the game. Early in the game, maybe a situation, bases loaded, and a good lefty hitter coming up when you want to bring that lefty in. And if you bring him in the earlier innings, you don't have him for the late innings. So I think it's very important to have more than one lefty in the bullpen.
The names Lugo and Gazelman have kind of faded.
Well, Lugo's hurt. Lugo's injured.
Okay.
He's back sometime in May, I believe. That's what they've been saying, I think. Yeah. So,
and Zellman's pitched a little bit, a couple of games,
Yeah, he's pitching. He's got a 4.5 ERA, which is about what he is.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly what he is.
So they should be okay through the Carrasco injury.
Yeah, because the first time, through, they're only going to need 4 starters because there's a day off. So, they'll just use 4 guys, and then the rotation will restart again before they have to go, to a 5th starter. So you're already pretty much 10 days into the season before you need that 5th starter. So I think they'll be fine. They just have to figure out who the number 4 guy is going to be, between Yamamoto,
Walker,
Lucchesi, and Walker. Now, Walker is your number 3 right now.
Okay.
Okay, so it'll be between Peterson, Lucchesi, and Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
Nice problems to have, really.
Really?
Oh yeah. And you're gonna need every one of those starters by the end of the year. So.
No question. Hey, before we get to the meat of the team, I just want to ask you guys how you responded to Governor Christie being a member of the New York Mets Board of Directors. I wanted to throw up myself, but I have a weak stomach for other reasons nowadays. But that really didn't play well with me, and I'm kind of being serious. I can see him usurping power, and the guy who comes to mind, a few guys come to mind. O'Malley comes to mind. Who was I thinking of before? M. Donald Grant comes to mind. Guys making decisions who are not baseball in the best interest of the Mets. Let's put it that way. That's just my initial.
I don't see him being a major force in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that he is going to add a lot of weight to the board of directors. But physically a lot of weight, but no meat as far as that goes. That doesn't bother me. I think Marty mentioned that his son works for the Mets, right, Marty?
Yes, he works in player development. Yeah, has for a while. So, I mean, as long as he keeps the Shea Bridge open, we should be all right.
Okay. But, yeah, it's just one of those things. The other guy that had that intro to baseball, that he's just not into it with the day-to-day stuff, was Steinbrenner. Speaking of portly power trippers. And I don't see, Christie is not one to stay in the background.
No, he's a 50-year fan, Ralph. 50-year fan. So, I mean, he wants to win just like we do. I mean, I don't think politics is going to have anything to do with it.
No, and I don't think he's going to have any real weight. And, you know, it's just another name on the board of directors. You know, so.
Okay, I feel better. I'm easily appeased this time of year. 2 more weeks till opening day. 2 or 3 more weeks till opening day.
No, less than that now.
Yeah, a week and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God. 7, 8, 9 days. Yeah. Jeez.
And you saw the preview yesterday with DeGrom against Scherzer, who pitching for Washington, and I heard that game. It's tough listening to the away game announcers, and that's all they're giving us from spring training.
Yeah,
and
terrible.
That's terrible. I got nothing from that game whatsoever. Eventually, I turned it off and I just followed through game day. I didn't really care what they had to say.
Right.
So,
what's been disappointing this year is that, you know, the Mets have done very little radio. You know, in past years, every game was on the radio, and this year, I think there's only 4 games total on the radio, which is very disappointing.
Especially since I got so much out of the one that they did a week and a half ago, whatever it was, and they said then we won't be back for a while. Wow, and I don't think
it must be the COVID thing. They're just not traveling, you know.
Right. Well, America's traveling. They've increased air travel. More people have traveled by air in the last week than in any week since the COVID thing started. And I just don't understand what's going on. We got the
Miami is going crazy. I mean, they've had to shut things down in Miami because there's so many kids going nuts, getting drunk. They have to have a curfew in effect. I mean, it's horrendous. And, you know, ramifications of the COVID are going to be felt for many, many a week after this is over.
Yeah. I wonder why.
Not just in Florida. These people are going to be going back to their hometowns, wherever they're coming from. And it's just we're so close with the vaccines.
Yeah, they're giving all us old folks are getting the vaccine, and we're the ones that have been staying home and not spreading anything around. But these young people that are out with no masks and are spreading things around are not eligible because they're too young. So maybe there's something wrong with the way they're doing things, you know. Maybe they should have shot these young kids up so they could go to school and get off the street, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
they're the ones that spreading it.
Yeah. Well, right now it's like the 18 to 24 range are the ones that are getting it the most. That have the highest incidence.
Could see why.
And they say by May they'll have enough vaccines so everybody could get it. And the problem is educating the folks to take the vaccine.
Well,
I don't remember in the polio. We were 8 years old with the polio vaccine. I don't remember it being a choice.
No.
You walk down there towards Junction Boulevard, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember where it was in particular. Mm-hmm. But nobody was, parents weren't saying, should we get the vaccine? Shouldn't we get the vaccine?
I think you had to get it to go to school.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did.
Oh, okay.
Plus it wasn't political. Plus it wasn't politicized either.
Right. And that's, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and they're saying half the military people don't want to take it. Were you given a choice when we were in the military? I wasn't given a choice. Like, they hit us from both sides with
right.
With
you
needles.
Lined up. They were guns that they shot into you.
Right.
But and that was almost a point of pride. You know what I mean? It's like when you got your uniforms, it was an advancement through basic training. Now, speaking of basic training, it comes to mind that I hadn't thought about this in 50 years. Marty, you took basic training in Amarillo, the same place I took tech school, and you never went to Lackland.
No, I didn't because so many people were joining up at that time to avoid the Army that Lackland was full. So they had to open up another basic training place. And the stupid thing about it was that when I got my next assignment, I got sent to freaking San Antonio anyway. Not Lackland, but Kelly at the time. So I think they kept me in Texas because the computers weren't very smart back then. I don't know if you remember, but I do. They asked you, where would you like to be stationed if you had a choice, So I said, well, the East Coast or the West Coast. So computers not being too bright at that time stuck me right in the middle,
I remember visiting you at Kelly.
That's right. You saw a softball game we were playing, right? I believe you did.
Yes. Boy, I hadn't even thought about that in a long time. Yeah. And also, you drove the blue bike for Bright Pharmacy, as did I. I didn't remember that.
Yes.
So I want to advise you out there, if you want to pick up the latest on Marty Rose, just get in touch with him on Facebook. You learn a whole bunch of stuff that even if you knew him since the second grade, you might have forgotten.
From that drugstore, remember Leo Kaplan?
Of course.
His daughter is on Facebook from Jackson
Linda.
Heights. Yeah.
Yes. And
I told her I used to work there.
I remember Sid, his partner.
Right. Sid and Leo. Yep.
And there was a guy named another Marty, who was one of the clerks who worked there, who I remember as being a great guy. But we dust a while, and then we fiddle around restocking, and then we get to drive the bike on appointments to deliver Modes to the women in the neighborhood, who were incredibly grateful and tipped much better than if you worked for the for the butcher, where you had to carry a big load for a little tip. So that was a great job, as a matter of fact. That was
it was definitely a good high school job. Yeah.
Now, the last thing I'll ask you about Amarillo, were you there in the winter or the summer?
Amarillo, summer.
Yeah, summer. Yeah. So it wasn't as bad, obviously, as the winter, but it was hot.
It was hot. Yeah, I was beginning of June is when I started that. So it was 6 weeks, I think. So
yeah.
So by the end of July.
And then you get to go home in between tech school and
a little bit of leave. Actually, I never got sent to tech school. I just got sent to an assignment, and I kind of learned on the job, So
what they called OJT.
Yeah. I was in aircraft scheduling, and then I was in flight records. So it was interesting.
You kept the records of the pilots in Vietnam when they flew their planes.
Flying time,
Flight time.
Well, every time they went out on a mission, they had to fill out. It was a Form 5 that they had to fill out. How much time they flew, what kind of time, first pilot, co-pilot, navigator, blah blah, the whole thing. And those things had to be key punched because they had just began, data processing at that time.
Right.
Talking 67, 68. So we had to key punch all that stuff.
80 what they call them? 80-something keys on the key punch. And you put it into the UNIVAC 1050 computer, if I remember correctly, which took up a whole room, literally had to be air conditioned, and the cell phones that we have more power than the entire room.
That's true. That's true. That is true.
Yes.
You think about it, yeah. Unbelievable.
All right, enough yakking about the Air Force. Although the recruiter was in Flushing, and the New York Mets were right around the corner from the recruiter. Sergeant Yakamada, or what was his name?
Palengayan?
Could have been.
Palengayan. It was a Filipino guy, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Taught us everything we needed to know except about mortars and Agent Orange. That's all.
No, he failed to mention that.
Those two little things he left out. But the color blue was nice as opposed to khaki. I remember that. That was a big selling point.
All right. Let's talk about the lineup, Ralph.
All right. First base, Alonso, having a good spring.
Excellent.
A damn good spring. Which, short season, but a sophomore jinx nonetheless. And I'm happy he's bouncing back. Flynn at second seems to be his best position. Am I correct?
Wait a second. Flynn? Did you say Flynn?
Flynn, let's drive a single to the wonderment of all. Okay. McNeil.
No.
McNeil's hitting 103.
McNeil, not Flynn. Okay.
Yeah, McNeil's hitting 103.
That's close to Flynn.
Yes, that's cause, and he doesn't play very well at anything but second. So if he gets beaten out, which is a possibility, I can't pronounce his name, Guillermo or
Oh, Guillorme. Guillorme is going to be the utility guy. He's not going to be a regular player.
Yeah, he can play all three positions. Yeah.
Right.
He's pretty good there.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I got to ask you guys about the progression of as we go to shortstop. Lindor's talks with the Mets. Will he be extended before opening day?
Good question. I think they're pretty close, Don't you think they're pretty close?
Yeah. And this is where Cohen comes into play. Okay, open up the wallet, and get this done, because you don't want to let this linger. He's already said that he's not going to talk during the season. Get it done before the season starts. That way you don't have to worry about it. Otherwise, he goes free agency next year, and you got a problem. So, this is where, like I said, Cohen's big pockets come into play, and they've got to do it.
But it does open the train of thought to signing Syndergaard, Conforto. You can't sign all three of them. So
you can. Of course, yes, you can. You can sign all three of them. Conforto, they started talking with Conforto as well. But it's going to be a matter of, does Conforto want to stay, or is he going to let Boris, do the dealing? So, Boris likes to go free agency, but it's up to Conforto to say, no, I want to stay here. Let's work something out.
Well, our owner has more money than anybody else, so let's see if he's willing to part with it.
Yep. But this is where those big pockets come into play. I had no problems with him not signing Springer. I had no problems, without him signing a couple of other people. But these are the guys they need to sign.
I agree.
Okay. Third base. Did you have a problem with them not signing the Cubs third baseman?
Well, he's not a free agent, Ralph. Bryant doesn't become a free agent until after the year.
Yeah, it would have had to have been a trade.
Yeah, that would have had to been.
Was there a talk of that for a while? That sounded serious.
Yeah, and it still may happen. Come a couple of months into the season, get closer to the trading deadline. If the Cubs are nowhere and the Mets have that shot, and Davis isn't living up to what he needs to, I can see that trade being made then.
Okay. Are you happy, guys, with Dom Smith in left and Davis at third? The left side of the field looks a little shaky defensively.
I think Davis is okay. He's not great, but I think he's adequate at third. But, Dom has been very shaky out there still. And I don't know what the answer is. He's going to have to play. If he's going to hit, he's going to have to play. That's the way it is. He's got a little on-the-job training. Maybe next year the DH will be in finally, but you can't count on that. So if you want his bat in the lineup, you got to put him out there.
Yeah.
Okay. We haven't talked about McCann at catcher.
He's been good.
He's been solid.
Yeah, all these out-of-town announcers, like you've been talking about on the radio, they've been praising him. So I think he's going to be really good. I really think so.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Robert.
And the pitchers all seem to like him. He's worked very hard to, learn all the different pitchers and stuff. So I think he'll be fine. backup, it should be Nito, but, Nito's been hurt much of the spring, so we have to see.
Right. There was a rumor of getting somebody earlier in the week. I don't remember who that was. I know it wasn't Doug Flynn.
No.
I keep up. What are you saying?
Maybe you're referring to Chico Escuela.
Yes. Number 5, I might add. That's how crazy I am. So, overall, has this been a good spring, mediocre spring, or a bad spring? Robert?
It's been a productive spring. The way they were playing the games earlier, you didn't know how many innings they were going to play, rollover innings, you'd have the bases loaded and the other managers say, okay, that's it, roll the inning over. So, it was very chaotic. But overall, I think it's been a decent spring for them.
Good.
Yeah.
Marty?
Yeah, I agree. It's been a good spring, except for the injuries. Like I said, I'm happy with the way the rotation's shaken out, even with the injuries. I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about McNeil. He's only hitting 103, and I'm wondering if it's where he's being placed in the lineup, because he usually has been hitting like first or second. I understand Nemo's going to be batting first, but I don't see why they can't move him up to second and move Lindor down to third. Well, we'll see. Maybe I guess they'll just keep him down where he is for now. But 103 is he's been like the worst hitter all spring.
Yeah, but he's I've watched or listened to most of the games. Now, what was it, Saturday? He got hit 3 times. He didn't even get a chance to swing the bat.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's been hit quite a few times during the spring. So we'll see. Hopefully, he'll start getting regular reps and getting his at bats, and he'll come around. The guy's a hitter. I mean, he always seems to make the adjustment. So hopefully he'll do it again this time.
And if you guys can remember that expression, he'll be there when the bell rings. Mm-hmm. They don't say that very much, but it seems to be a different game once it's played for real stats. And let's just hope for the best. And hey, this has been, given the circumstances, and the Baylor thing really hit me earlier in the day. It's just our age, you lose people that you really root for with that 12-year-old innocence, where your mouth is just like, whoa, did you see that?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, when we were 12 and these guys were 24, they seemed so much older than us. But now, our age, and, they're in their mid-80s, and it seems a lot closer.
It does.
Yes.
That sure is.
Let's try to avoid that list, guys, at least for another week. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right. So we're no longer day-to-day, we're week-to-week. And in this case, 2 weeks.
One more thing about being 12, Ralph. Do you remember the 1960 basketball Olympic team?
Oh, yes.
When we were 12 or 13 or whatever the heck we were.
Oh, God, that was great.
That was one of the best teams ever put together. You can look it up.
And they were all amateurs.
That's right.
Yes, a lot of them were. And some of them, like Adrian O'Brien, or what was his name?
Smith?
Adrian Smith.
Adrian Smith.
Played with Cincinnati, was a pretty good player with Cincinnati. But these guys, some of these guys came off what they called Industrial League, where the Tapers or one of the teams.
New York Puck Tapers.
Whoa, not bad. And they, these guys went to work out of college for an industry of doing something, a factory, and they started playing basketball, and they were basically, that was their job. But they were semi-pro, and the Olympics chose Smith and one other guy.
Wasn't Oscar on that team? And Jerry West?
Oscar, West, Bellamy, Lucas.
Yeah.
And these were all the guys. The reason you remember them so well, Mert, is because part of the ticket deal, as I used to think about it, was the holiday festival. And they'd bring in, New York would bring in and the NITs, that sort of thing.
Right.
They'd bring in Cincinnati, Ohio State.
Right.
I remember seeing the Van Arsdales and Bellamy come in. And can't think of what team that was, but I remember we saw Ohio State with Lucas and Newell and who was the other card on the Celtics that came from that team too. But
Havlicek?
Not Havlicek. There was another Havlicek, of course. But
Larry Siegfried.
Siegfried, exactly right.
Larry Siegfried, yeah.
Yes.
And Bobby Knight was on that team also.
Yes. Pete Newell, Bobby Knight, and a guy named Joe Roberts, who made the pros, but is famous for me. He was an assistant coach on the 75 Warrior team that Hal Adels coached to a championship. They beat Baltimore that year. And Joe Roberts was off of that Ohio State team, and was an assistant coach with the Warriors. So we got a little Mind NBA going tonight. Thank you, Elgin.
Good.
Thank you, Elgin, for that. I saw more NBA than I ever saw baseball growing up. I went to camp for 8 weeks in the middle of the season. So I'd see games in September or opening day and that sort of thing, and then not till September sometimes. So, but the NBA, we lived in Madison Square Garden. We were there a lot, racing up the stairs to get the best GO seats.
Right.
You'd have your card. You get in for 75 cents.
That's right.
And those were great days. If you didn't have the Murray Rose tickets.
That's right.
And you know what's nice? Hal Bach, who's on our network so much, looks back to his early days of being in the AP, and the guy he liked the most, who tutored him and broke him in, was Murray Rose.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was.
well,
He was. You didn't know him, but he was a terrific guy. He really was. Very friendly and outgoing. Really, really good. Yep.
Well, I can't imagine him being that much different than Jack, your dad, or Barn, your brother, or you yourself. So I'm blessed. And Robert, you're an additive. You got Larry Siegfried this week. I didn't take the hat I'm wearing is the Jersey City Little Giants of 1950. You get a tip of that hat right there. I'll send you a picture. I'm tipping it. There it is. All right. Thanks, guys. Terrific show. The world notwithstanding. Let's hope for the best in Colorado. And hope that this is the final shooting before somebody like Biden, for instance, takes a stand on gun control and says, wait a minute, this has got to stop. It's got to stop somewhere. It's the first one on my watch. I'm talking about him saying this, and it's going to be the last if I can help it. That's what he's got to say and come out, because this is bullshit. They're opening the schools again all over the country. What better way to open the schools with some shootings, right? Stupid people out there. Crazy world we live in. Thanks for sharing, guys.
Okay.
And Marty Rose, Robert Cole. This is the Met Show, but this is Elgin Show. Adios, everybody. Happy trails.
Night.
Good night.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
The proceeding has been a comfortably zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.